It started with a sound I'll never forget, the kind that tells you something bad just got real. A heavy, metallic slam echoing through the Cedar Key post office. The steel security shutter came crashing down, sealing us inside. The sunlight vanished in an instant, and all that was left was the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint smell of old paper and floor wax. That's when I saw her, Karen Tillman, our self-appointed queen of Fox Glove Landing, standing there in her lavender pantsuit like she owned the place. Hands on her hips, a dolly loaded with postal bins at her feet. She looked like a pirate who'd just been told the treasure chest was empty. I'm Hank Flanders. I sell high-grade security hardware. I like order, documentation, and things that last. And Karen, she was the opposite, chaos wrapped in a blazer. For months, she'd been turning our quiet neighborhood into her personal kingdom, writing HOA violation notes about the color of people's mailboxes, sticking warnings on packages, and even opening letters she claimed looked suspicious. She said she was protecting property values. What she was really doing was tampering with mail. And today, she finally went too far. I stood there with my wife, Jane. She's an EMT, calm in crisis, phone already up, recording. That red light on her screen was our quiet insurance policy, a witness with a battery. "Ma'am," Postmaster Henderson said from behind the counter, his voice level and cold, one hand hovering near the button that had just sealed the shutter. "You are interfering with the delivery of United States mail. That's a federal offense." Karen didn't even flinch. "I am the president of the Fox Glove Landing Homeowners Association," she declared. "All community mail requires my approval before distribution." The room went dead silent. Even the hum of the lights felt nervous. Henderson didn't move. He just held the phone receiver to his ear and said, "Yes, sir, she's still on the premises." That was the moment I realized this wasn't another HOA argument. This was federal. Karen's eyes darted around the room, scanning the rest of us, neighbors, witnesses, potential traitors. Her face flushed a deeper pink. "You people should thank me. I'm keeping your community respectable." But nobody said a word. Everyone had seen her antics for months, the stickers on doors, the opened birthday cards, the delays, the humiliation. This was the breaking point. Then Henderson's voice cut through the silence. "Postal inspectors are on their way. Nobody leaves the building." You could feel the shift, the calm before a storm. Karen's little HOA empire had just collided with the federal government, and there was no bylaws clause that could save her now. Jane lowered her phone for a second and whispered to me, "We've got it, everything." I nodded, my hands were steady. It wasn't adrenaline, it was clarity. The kind that comes when a bully finally meets a wall they can't push. Then an older woman by the photo booth spoke up, Mrs. Gable, pale, voice trembling. "My husband's insulin was supposed to arrive today. It's in a small white cooler. Did you see it?" Karen waved her off. If it mattered, they'd plan better. That's when Jane stepped forward, her tone shifting, EMT mode. "Ma'am, what kind of medicine?" "It's insulin," Mrs. Gable said, tears welling. "He needs it within the hour." The air in the room changed again. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was about life. Jane's voice was calm but firm. "Medical cooler located, need EMS on standby." I looked at Karen's dolly. There it was, a small white box with red letters, medical supplies, refrigerate immediately. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just a power trip anymore. This was cruelty. Henderson's face went hard. "Mrs. Tillman, hand me that cooler now." Karen hesitated, her eyes wide, flicking between us, the cooler and the locked door. For the first time, I saw fear, real fear. And in that dim post office, with the shutter locked and the air thick with tension, I realized something. Karen Tillman had spent years pretending to be powerful. But in that moment, she was just another person caught in the gears of something bigger, a system she'd tried to manipulate. And those gears had finally started to turn. The second Karen stepped back, something in the room shifted. You could feel it like the air thickened, charged with the kind of tension you only feel before something breaks. Henderson's hand was outstretched, calm but commanding. "The cooler now." But Karen's instincts weren't wired for surrender. She moved just enough to put herself between the dolly and the postmaster, one manicured hand gripping the handle like she was defending her throne. "This is all evidence," she said, voice shaking but defiant. "Evidence of how poorly this post office operates. I'm preserving it for documentation." "Karen," I said quietly, "that box contains a man's insulin." She glared at me, that same sharp, rehearsed glare she'd used at HOA meetings when she wanted to shut people down. But it didn't work this time. Her voice cracked when she said, "Rules are rules, Hank. Procedures matter." My wife took one step closer, eyes locked on Karen's. "A human life matters more than your HOA rules." That line hit hard. The other neighbors, who had been frozen and silent, started murmuring. One man said, "Just give her the medicine." Another woman muttered, "This is insane." Karen's control was slipping. You could see it, the twitch in her jaw, the shallow breathing. She built her whole identity around control, and now, surrounded by witnesses, she was losing every inch of it. Mrs. Gable was sobbing now, whispering her husband's name under her breath. Jane moved toward her, gently guiding her to sit on one of the old vinyl chairs near the counter. "He's gonna be okay," Jane said softly. "We'll get it to him." Then she turned to Henderson. "Sir, permission to retrieve it." He nodded. "Do it carefully. She's already committed one felony. Let's not add another." Jane stepped forward. Karen took a half step in front of the dolly again, arms spread. "You can't touch that. This is HOA property." That's when I stepped between them. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked her dead in the eye and let the silence stretch until she blinked. Then slowly I crossed my arms, not in anger, just steady. "No, Karen, it's not HOA property, it's federal property, and you're standing on the wrong side of that line." Her lip trembled. "You think you're so righteous, don't you, all of you?" Behind her, a few envelopes slipped off the dolly and scattered across the floor. One of them landed face up, a birthday card with a dog wearing a party hat. The sight of it, so small and innocent, made the whole situation feel even uglier. "Mrs. Tillman," Henderson said again, voice even colder now, "step away from the mail." But she didn't. She lunged, not for the cooler, but for another bin marked outgoing. For a second I couldn't process it. Then it clicked, she was panicking. She thought if she could destroy something, maybe she could hide the evidence. "Stop," I shouted. Too late, she shoved the dolly forward like a battering ram. Henderson sidestepped, but a young clerk, Leo, barely 19, took the hit. The bins slammed into his legs. He stumbled backward into the wall of P.O. boxes with a metallic clang. "Ma'am, that's assault on a federal employee," Henderson barked. Karen screamed, "Get out of my way." That was it. The line had vanished. She wasn't the HOA president anymore. She was a cornered animal. Jane ran to the clerk, checking his head and pulse, her voice switching into that calm, professional EMT tone. "You okay, Leo? Any dizziness?" "I'm fine," he stammered, shaken. "She just pushed me." I moved in front of Karen's dolly, planting one hand on the edge of the bin she was trying to drag. I didn't touch her. I didn't have to. The bin was heavy and I wasn't budging. "Let go," I said, low and steady. "Get your hand off my property," she shouted. "It's not yours." She tugged harder. Mail spilled everywhere, letters, small boxes, even that white cooler tipped slightly. I saw Henderson pull out his phone and start recording, documenting every move. Somewhere outside, faint but growing louder, came the wail of sirens. Karen froze. Her eyes darted to the shuttered windows, the locked doors, the scattered mail at her feet. She looked like a woman waking up from a nightmare she'd written herself into. She let go of the bin, her shoulders sagged. For the first time, she looked small. The sirens grew louder until they stopped right outside. Car doors slammed. Then came the sound of boots on pavement. Jane still had her phone up, recording. Henderson unlocked the main glass door, leaving the steel shutter down. Two figures stepped inside, calm and professional, navy blue jackets, bold yellow letters. U.S. Postal Inspection Service. They moved like people who'd done this before. One man, one woman, no wasted motion, no words at first, just eyes scanning everything. The mail, the dolly, the cooler, the frightened clerk, the crying neighbor. And finally, Karen Tillman, standing in the center of it all, frozen in lavender, surrounded by her own chaos. The mail inspector spoke first. Postmaster Henderson. Yes, sir, Henderson said, pointing straight at her. That's her. The inspector turned to Karen, voice even and absolute. Ma'am, I'm Postal Inspector Davies. Hands behind your back. You are under arrest for mail interference and assault. You could have heard a pin drop. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Only the sound of the handcuffs clicking shut, sharp, metallic, final. And for the first time in months, the room felt quiet again. The sound of those handcuffs, metal against metal, echoed through the post office like a gavel striking. It was the sound of the end of her little kingdom. But as it turned out, it wasn't the end of the story. It was only the start of something far bigger. Karen didn't speak at first. She just stood there, staring at the wall like her brain couldn't compute what had happened. The mail inspector, Davies, spoke with calm precision. Ma'am, you are under arrest for interference with the United States mail and assault on a federal employee. Anything you say can and will be used against you. The female inspector, Roar, knelt beside the young clerk, Leo. You all right, son? She asked softly. I'm okay, he mumbled. Jane answered before he could finish. He's fine. I checked him. No concussion, no head trauma. Roar nodded, gave Jane a quick, approving glance, and stood up. Postmaster Henderson, she said, her tone shifting back to business. Tell me exactly what happened. Henderson gestured at Karen, still frozen in disbelief. She tried to take custody of the mail, refused to release it when ordered, then she assaulted my clerk. Roar looked around. Is anyone recording this? Jane raised her phone. We've been recording since the shutter went down. Davies turned toward her, expression unreadable. Good, keep it that way. Mrs. Gable, still trembling, whispered, What about my husband's medicine? Roar followed her gaze to the white cooler. Without a word, she walked over, picked it up, and handed it directly to Mrs. Gable. Go, take care of him. We'll contact you for a statement. Mrs. Gable clutched that cooler like a lifeline and ran out, tears streaking her face. When the door closed behind her, there was silence again. The kind that comes after a storm, but before the damage is tallied. Davies crouched beside the bins Karen had tried to steal. His gloved hands sifted through stacks of envelopes and catalogs until he pulled out a crumpled set of papers from the side pocket of the dolly. Henderson, he said, frowning, did you process a hold on the Fox Glove Landing development? Henderson blinked. No, sir, that would require individual authorizations. We've had none. Roar took the papers from Davies and examined them. Her expression darkened. This is a Form 8076, authorization to hold mail for the entire neighborhood. She held it up for everyone to see. Signed by the Fox Glove Landing Architectural Review Board. The what? I asked. The Architectural Review Board, Roar repeated, her voice low. Looks official, but it's forged. This isn't a local document. It's a fake federal form. Karen finally spoke, her voice small and cracking. That's an administrative misunderstanding. Davies turned to her, eyes narrowing. A misunderstanding? This is a forged document used to obstruct federal operations. He bagged the papers in an evidence sleeve. That's another felony. I felt Jane's hand slip into mine. She squeezed once. The look she gave me said it all. This was bigger than a control freak's power trip. This was a scheme. Roar straightened. Ma'am, you'll be processed downtown. We'll need statements from everyone. As they led Karen toward the door, she looked back at me. For just a second, all the arrogance was gone. Her lips trembled, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. You think you've won, Hank? You don't know what's coming. But I did know one thing. Whatever was coming, it was wrapped in paperwork and greed. The inspectors left with her, the sound of the door shutting behind them like punctuation. Henderson turned to me. Mr. Flanders, your wife's footage, keep it safe. The postal inspectors will be in touch. When we finally stepped outside, the evening sun hit my face, and it felt different, colder somehow. The blue and red lights from the inspector's car reflected off the post office windows. Karen sat in the back seat, head down, hands cuffed in her lap. For a long moment, I just stood there watching her. The queen of the HOA, sitting in a government sedan, silent and powerless. Jane touched my shoulder. "You okay?" "I don't know," I said quietly. "I thought I'd feel satisfied. Instead, I think we just stepped into something we don't understand yet." And I was right. Because 2 days later, Inspector Rohr called us in for a statement. The post office was calm again, but the questions she asked weren't about Karen's attitude or the scuffle with Leo. They were about why she'd done it. "Mr. Flanders," Rohr said, "does your HOA have an architectural review board?" "Sure," I said. "It's a subcommittee, just a few residents who sign off on fence colors and landscaping changes. They don't handle mail." "Does it have a treasurer named Arthur Pendleton?" I frowned, never heard of him. Rohr slid a paper across the table. "That's the signature on the forged hold request." Jane leaned forward, "So she forged the name." Rohr nodded. "Yes, and it gets worse. The contact address listed isn't your HOA office, it's a P.O. box, rented 6 months ago." I felt a chill. "In whose name?" Davies answered this time, flipping through his notes. "Arthur Pendleton, same as the forged signature, fake address, fake person, payments made by money orders, untraceable." I exhaled slowly. So she didn't just forge documents, she created a ghost. Jane shook her head in disbelief. A shell identity inside the HOA. Rohr leaned forward. "Exactly, and the question now is, who else knew about it?" That's when it hit me. Karen wasn't working alone. She built something. A network, a cover, maybe even a business. And as we left that day, walking out under the flickering fluorescent lights of the inspection office, Jane looked at me and said what we were both thinking. "This isn't about mail anymore." And she was right. It was about money. And for the first time, I realized our HOA wasn't just dysfunctional, it was corrupt. That night I couldn't sleep. The hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound in the house, but my mind was louder, replaying every detail from that post office. The shutter slamming down, the insulin box, the forged mail hold form. Karen wasn't dumb. Twisted, yes. Power-hungry, absolutely, but dumb? No, she built something structured, deliberate. Forging a federal form wasn't something you did on a whim. You needed intent, resources, and most of all, a reason. Jane sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, eyes fixed on the screen. The glow from it lit her face in soft blue light. "Hank," she said quietly, "come look at this." She pulled up our county's business registry. "There's no record of a Foxglove Landing Architectural Review Board," she said. "It doesn't legally exist. The real board is just a subcommittee of the HOA, no bank account, no tax ID, nothing." I rubbed my chin. "So she created a fake one." Jane nodded. "Yeah, a ghost board, a shell she could hide behind." I leaned over her shoulder and scrolled through the filings. If it doesn't exist on paper, how's she funding it? Jane smirked faintly. "That's what I'm trying to find out." We sat there for hours, cross-referencing, pulling up property records, archived meeting minutes, anything that could connect the dots. Then Jane froze mid-scroll. "Wait." She pointed at the screen. It was a scanned HOA financial report from months earlier, one no one ever paid attention to. Buried under miscellaneous consulting fees was a single line: Green Meadow Consulting, $7,500. "Green Meadow Consulting?" I repeated. "Never heard of them." "Neither have I," Jane said. "And I've been on every committee email chain since 2018. I felt the puzzle pieces shifting into place, slow but inevitable. "Pull that name, search the state registry." She typed fast. A moment later, the result popped up. Green Meadow Consulting, LLC, registered to a single address, a P.O. box in Cedar Key. My stomach sank. The same post office Karen tried to hijack. Jane met my eyes. "You think it's connected?" "I'd bet everything I own it is." The next morning, I called Inspector Rohr. When she picked up, I could hear papers rustling in the background. She was already neck-deep in the investigation. "Mr. Flanders," she said, "you called at a good time. We just pulled the security footage from the post office. You were right. The fake P.O. box was rented 6 months ago by Karen Tillman and another individual." I gripped the phone tighter. "Who?" "A man named Marcus Thorne." The name hit me like a punch. Everyone in town knew that name. Thorne was a developer, slick suits, expensive watches, and a reputation for buying land that wasn't for sale. For years, he'd been trying to get his hands on the green belt behind our neighborhood, 20 acres of protected woodland. Jane mouthed the name across the room. "Thorne." Roar continued. "He's been under quiet review by zoning authorities for some questionable acquisitions. We believe your HOA president was acting as his inside partner." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "So that's what this is about, not mail, land." "Exactly. She wasn't just intercepting party invitations," Roar said. "She was intercepting zoning notices, ballots, and environmental reports. Anything that could stop Thorne from developing that property." The line went quiet for a moment. Then Roar added softly, "You and your wife did good work, Mr. Flanders, but this rabbit hole goes deeper than you think." After the call, I sat there at the kitchen table for a long time. The morning light was spilling through the blinds, dust floating in the air like tiny secrets. Jane poured me a cup of coffee and sat down beside me. "So," she said, "what now?" "We find proof," I said, "something tangible that connects the money to her." That's when I thought of Buddy Joel, our retired county records clerk turned neighborhood gossip hub. The man could find a tax record faster than a bloodhound on a trail. That afternoon, I showed up at his porch with 2 beers. He grinned the moment he saw me. "Hank, you look like a man sitting on a secret." "You could say that," I said, handing him a bottle. "Hypothetically, Buddy, if a developer wanted to move money to an HOA president under the radar, how would he do it?" Buddy took a long sip, squinted toward his flower beds, and said, "He'd set up a shell company, some boring name. Green Meadow Consulting, maybe." My breath caught. Buddy chuckled. Then he'd funnel payments through that to make it look like consulting fees, all clean on the books. "Why?" I asked. "Because consulting payments aren't illegal, Hank, but bribes are." I looked at him, trying not to show the chill that crept down my spine. "And if that shell company had a P.O. box?" "Then it's even smarter," Buddy said. "No fixed address, no physical records. Unless you've got someone on the inside, you'll never find proof." Jane called it that night, "We need an inside source." And we had one person in mind. Arthur Williams, the HOA secretary. The quiet, soft-spoken man who always sat in the corner during meetings, scribbling notes and avoiding eye contact. He was terrified of Karen, but I'd seen him hesitate more than once when she went too far. "Arthur's our way in," Jane said, "but we can't accuse him. We need to show him we know." Her plan was simple and brilliant. We invited him for coffee. Neutral ground, small cafe 2 towns over. When he sat down, nervous and clutching his briefcase, I slid a manila folder across the table. Inside was a still frame from the post office footage. Karen and Marcus Thorne, side by side, filling out the P.O. box form. Arthur's face drained of color. "We know," I said calmly, "and so do the postal inspectors." He didn't say a word at first, just stared at that picture like it was a ghost come back to life. Then his hand started to shake. "She said it was just paperwork," he whispered. "Something for the community." Jane leaned forward. "Arthur, was it also something for Green Meadow Consulting?" His eyes flicked up to hers, wide, terrified, and full of guilt. That was our answer. And in that quiet cafe, with the smell of burnt coffee and the clatter of plates in the background, I realized we were no longer fighting an HOA president. We were fighting a machine. Arthur didn't speak for a long time. He just sat there, staring down at that photo of Karen and Marcus Thorne like it was a piece of evidence from a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. His fingers were trembling slightly against the table, his untouched coffee cooling beside him. Jane and I stayed quiet. Sometimes silence says more than 100 questions. Finally, he exhaled shakily. She said it was legal, he whispered. That the developer was sponsoring community improvements, benches for the park, new landscaping. She said it was just business. Arthur, Jane said softly, you're a good man, we know that. But you need to tell us everything now before this eats you alive. He hesitated, eyes darting around the cafe like he expected Karen to materialize out of the shadows. You don't understand, he said. Karen, she recorded everything, every board meeting, every conversation. She kept backups. She said it was for transparency, but really it was leverage on all of us. That word hung in the air, leverage. Then he swallowed hard. There's something else, he said, lowering his voice to a whisper. Marcus Thorne didn't just pay her, he made her record the bribe. My stomach tightened. What do you mean, record it? He didn't trust her, Arthur said. He made her call him on speaker, and he made me record it with this. He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a small black voice recorder. It looked ordinary, but the way he held it, like it was a loaded weapon, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I was supposed to hand it to him after the vote, he continued. But I couldn't, I kept it. Jane looked at him with that calm, steady focus she had when something big was unfolding. Arthur, what's on that recording? His voice cracked. The bribe, all of it. Thorne promised her $200,000 after the vote passed. She promised to rig the ballots and suppress the environmental objections. He pushed the recorder across the table toward me. It's all there. I looked down at it, a tiny piece of plastic that could blow open the whole thing. Arthur, this could put both of them away for good, I said quietly. But once this comes out, you'll need protection. He nodded, defeated but somehow lighter. I don't care, I just want it to end. Jane reached out and squeezed his hand. It will, Arthur, you did the right thing. That night he came to our house, his nervousness melting into determination. He brought more, a flash drive hidden in a plain envelope. This is the real ledger, he said, setting it on our kitchen counter. Not the one she shows the board. This one has the payments from Thorne's company, every fake invoice, every transaction, it's all there. We sat side by side at the kitchen table, the glow of Jane's laptop reflecting off our faces as we opened the files. Line after line of consulting fees, architectural services, community outreach reimbursements, thousands of dollars every month. Jane clicked on the tabs at the bottom of the spreadsheet. There were 3 separate sheets labeled active contracts, transfers, and private disbursements. The last one stopped us cold. It listed payments made directly to K. Tillman, coded as administrative bonuses. Each one matched the dates of the supposed HOA projects that never happened. $10,000 a month, Jane whispered, for 2 years. And right below that, another column, deposits, Green Meadow Consulting. Every payment routed through Thorne's company, I said. Perfect laundering, all hidden behind her fake architectural board. We sat there listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. It felt like the air itself was heavier, the weight of what we'd uncovered pressing down on us. Jane plugged in the voice recorder next. The file name was simple. Call recording Thorne 01. She hit play. Thorne's voice came through first, smooth, confident, smug. The final payment will clear once the vote passes. You get your cut and I get my development rights. Simple. Karen's voice followed, syrupy but trembling with greed. And the board members, don't worry, I'll handle them. They'll do what I tell them. Thorne laughed, a low, dark sound that sent a chill through me. That's what I'm paying you for, Madam President. Then there was silence. The kind of silence that fills a room when something true and ugly has been spoken aloud. Jane stopped the recording. Neither of us said a word for several seconds. Then I leaned back and exhaled slowly. That's it. That's the nail in the coffin. We didn't sleep much that night. We printed every document, backed up every file. Jane created a secure folder on 3 separate drives, one for us, one for Inspector Rohr, and one sealed in an envelope for safekeeping. When morning came, we called Rohr. I'll never forget her reaction when she heard the recording. She went dead silent for 10 seconds. Then she said, Mr. Flanders, you just handed us a conspiracy case. Over the next few days, things moved fast. Arthur gave his full statement to federal investigators under protection. The inspectors confirmed the ledger was real. The shell company was traced back to Thorne's office. Every transfer, every forged form, all lined up. But Jane had one last idea, bold, theatrical, and absolutely perfect. "Let's not just expose her quietly," she said. "Let's end this in front of everyone she ever intimidated at the annual HOA meeting." I blinked at her. "You want to confront her publicly?" "Not confront," Jane said, eyes sharp. "Show, let her see herself fall in real time." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Then let's give her a show she'll never forget. And as I watched Jane gather files, organize videos, and cut audio clips, I realized something about my wife. She didn't just heal people, she fixed broken things. This time, what she was fixing wasn't a wound. It was our entire community. The night before the HOA meeting, our house looked like a war room. Jane had her laptop open, cables everywhere, external drives stacked like ammunition. Every sound file, every scanned document, every clip from the post office had a place in her digital timeline. I'd never seen her this focused. She wasn't just editing a video, she was building a case. "This isn't about revenge," she said, eyes fixed on the screen. "It's about truth, about making sure no one ever gets away with something like this again." I nodded, packing slowly behind her. "Then we make it bulletproof, no speculation, no emotion, just the facts." Jane smirked. "I already cut out the part where you called her a chaos gremlin." "Good call," I said with a small laugh. It was the first time either of us had smiled in days. By midnight, she had a full presentation stitched together. The video from the post office, the forged forms, the voice recording, and even graphics showing the money trail. It was brutal in its precision. Every lie Karen had told was about to unravel in front of her neighbors, one documented fact at a time. When the morning came, I felt a strange calm, like the quiet before a storm you already know the direction of. The annual HOA meeting was being held in the community clubhouse. Normally, these things were boring, budget talk, landscaping updates, endless debates about what color mulch was neighborhood appropriate. But that night, the parking lot was packed. Word had spread after the post office incident, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Inside, the air buzzed with whispers. Karen stood at the front of the room, polished as ever, wearing a new pastel suit that probably cost more than my truck. Her chin was high, her smile rehearsed. Two of her loyal board members, the Martins, sat on either side, stone-faced and loyal as ever. Arthur Williams sat at the far end of the table, looking pale but determined. When our eyes met, he gave me the smallest nod. He was ready. Karen started the meeting with that fake cheer she was famous for. "Good evening, everyone. So lovely to see so many faces tonight. We have some exciting developments to discuss regarding the future of Foxglove Landing." Jane and I stood near the back, waiting. We knew her exciting development was code for the proposed sale of our green belt, the land Thorne wanted. She clicked her laser pointer, and the big screen behind her lit up with a render of luxury condos and a smiling family. "Thorne Development Group," she said proudly, "has offered a generous investment opportunity to enhance our community and increase property values." That was my cue. I stepped forward, voice steady but loud enough to cut through the chatter. "Point of order, Madame President." Karen's smile faltered. "Mr. Flanders, this isn't the time for—" "This isn't a question," I said, walking toward the front. "It's a presentation, and I believe it supersedes yours." Jane was already moving. Before Karen could react, she plugged her laptop into the projector. The screen behind Karen flickered, then froze, replaced by the forged mail-hold form with Karen's signature plastered across it. The room went silent. "What is this?" Karen barked, voice trembling. Jane faced the crowd. "This," she said clearly, "is what your HOA president has been doing behind your backs." Then she hit play. For 15 straight minutes, the room sat in stunned silence as Jane's presentation played. The footage from the post office, synced with audio from the inspector's cameras, filled the room with the echo of Karen's voice. They saw her yelling, pushing the postal clerk, the sound of handcuffs snapping shut. Then came the voice recording, her conversation with Thorne, negotiating the bribe, clear as crystal. Every few seconds, people gasped. Some muttered under their breath. A few even started filming the screen with their phones. When the final image appeared, Karen and Thorne at the post office counter renting the secret P.O. box, the room erupted. People shouted, demanded answers. The Martins looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. Karen stood frozen, her face drained of color, lips trembling as if she could feel her empire crumbling in real time. "This is a setup," she stammered. "You edited this, it's fake." Jane didn't raise her voice. "The files are verified by the Postal Inspection Service, and the U.S. Attorney's Office has copies." The room went dead silent again. Then Arthur stood. "It's true," he said, his voice shaking but strong enough to carry. "I gave them the ledger, I helped record the call, I can't keep lying for you, Karen." It was over. Karen's eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for someone, anyone to defend her. No one spoke. The neighbors she'd bullied for years stared back with cold fury. In that moment, something shifted in the air. Fear turned into unity. I looked at Jane and she gave me a small nod. It wasn't joy we felt, it was relief. The truth was finally free. Karen's voice cracked. "You think you can destroy me?" "No," I said softly. "You already did that yourself." She didn't respond. She just grabbed her purse, shoulders shaking, and walked out of the clubhouse as the crowd parted silently to let her pass. The door slammed behind her. And just like that, the spell she'd held over the neighborhood broke. People started clapping, not in celebration but in closure. Arthur sank into his chair, tears in his eyes. Jane closed her laptop and exhaled. "It's done," she whispered. But deep down, we knew this wasn't the end. There would still be lawyers, charges, hearings. Still, that night was the first time in months our community felt like a community again. For the first time, Foxglove Landing belonged to its people, not its president. The day of the trial felt colder than it should have been. The courthouse steps glistened with morning dew, and the air carried that stillness that comes before a reckoning. Jane and I arrived early, coffee cups in hand, hearts pounding in sync. We weren't just spectators anymore, we were witnesses to the fallout of something we'd uncovered piece by piece, like digging up a buried truth that refused to stay hidden. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Polished wood, beige walls, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Karen sat at the defense table in a gray suit instead of her usual pastels. Her posture was perfect, her hands clasped tightly together, but her eyes were hollow. Beside her sat Marcus Thorne, every bit the smug developer he'd always been. Perfectly tailored navy suit, slick back hair, the faintest smirk, like he still thought money could buy his way out of this. Across the aisle sat the prosecutors, flanked by postal inspectors Rohr and Davies. When they saw us, Rohr gave a small, knowing nod, a silent thank you that said more than words could. The judge entered, a tall woman with silver hair and a voice that carried command. "Court is now in session," she said. "The United States versus Karen Tillman and Marcus Thorne." The clerk read the charges: mail interference, forgery, bribery, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to defraud a federal agency. Each word echoed through the room like a hammer striking steel. When it was Karen's turn to stand, she did so slowly. Her lawyer placed a gentle hand on her arm, but she brushed it away. "How do you plead?" the judge asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Guilty." The word hung there, heavy and final. Thorne, of course, tried to posture. His attorney launched into a speech about misunderstood contracts and ambiguous communication. But the prosecutors had the evidence stacked like a mountain. The forged forms, the ledger, the recording, every piece of it airtight. Then they played the voice clip in court. Hearing it again in that solemn room, Thorne's voice promising payment, Karen's voice accepting it, felt different this time. There was no adrenaline, no chaos, just cold truth echoing through a place built for it. When the clip ended, Thorne's smirk vanished. The prosecutor turned toward the judge. "Your Honor, this was not a mistake. This was a calculated betrayal of federal law of neighbors of trust." Karen's lawyer made a plea for leniency. "Mrs. Tillman has expressed remorse. She was manipulated by a man who used her position for his own financial gain." That made Thorne glare at her, the first crack in his mask. But the judge didn't flinch. She looked directly at Karen. "You were the president of your community, people trusted you, and you used that trust to enrich yourself and obstruct the truth. That's not a mistake, Mrs. Tillman, that's greed." Karen's eyes welled up, and for the first time since this whole thing began, I saw something real behind them, regret, or maybe just exhaustion. When it was Thorne's turn, his arrogance faltered completely. The prosecutors revealed how he'd laundered the funds through multiple shell companies and used Karen as his access point into zoning committees. He didn't have a defense left to stand on. The sentencing was swift. Marcus Thorne, 5 years in federal prison plus restitution. Karen Tillman, 2 years, suspended after 12 months served, and permanent removal from any HOA or civic position. As the gavel came down, you could feel something shift in the room, not triumph, not joy, but release. Like the weight of months of deceit had finally been set down. After the hearing, Roar approached us outside the courtroom. "It's over," she said, shaking Jane's hand. "You both did something good here. People forget that local corruption hurts real families. You didn't." Jane smiled softly. "We just did what neighbors are supposed to do." Roar nodded. "That's the part that'll stick." As Karen was led past us, she stopped for just a second. Her face was pale, makeup faded, shoulders slumped. She didn't look like the woman who used to rule the HOA meetings with an iron fist. She looked small, human almost. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, not looking directly at us, "for everything." And before I could say a word, the deputy guided her forward. The click of her shoes on the courthouse floor echoed until it faded into silence. Outside, the sky had cleared. The courthouse steps shimmered under the sun, and the air smelled faintly of wet concrete and pine. I took Jane's hand. "It's strange," I said. "After all this, I thought I'd feel vindicated." She looked at me, her eyes warm but tired. "Vindication's loud," she said. "Peace is quiet." We stood there for a long moment, watching as the inspectors loaded boxes of evidence into an unmarked van. For the first time in months, I didn't feel anger, just a deep, aching calm. When we got home, the neighborhood was different. Kids played in the park again. People waved when they passed by. The HOA board had been dissolved, replaced by a temporary resident committee. Arthur was there, too, walking his dog, smiling for the first time in ages. He stopped by our gate and said, "You know, Hank, I thought our neighborhood was broken for good." I smiled back. Maybe it was just waiting for the right kind of shake-up. That night, as the crickets sang outside and the porch light flickered, I sat with Jane on the steps, watching the calm street that had once been the stage for chaos. "Think we'll ever get another HOA president like her?" I asked. Jane chuckled softly. "Not if I have anything to say about it." We clinked our coffee mugs together, the night breeze carrying away the last echoes of Karen's reign. And for the first time in a long time, Foxglove Landing finally felt like home again. Weeks passed, and for the first time in a long while, peace actually meant something around Foxglove Landing. The gossip that had once fed every corner of the neighborhood had gone quiet. No more memos taped to doors. No more early morning rule checks or suspicious HOA patrols. Just the sound of sprinklers at dawn and laughter from the kids down at the park. It was strange, though, the kind of quiet that felt earned, like the air itself had exhaled after holding its breath too long. I remember standing by my front porch one morning, coffee in hand, watching the mail truck pull up. The same post office that had once been a battlefield was now just normal again. Henderson waved when he saw me, and I waved back. Simple, honest peace. Jane joined me on the steps, brushing a few curls from her face. "You're smiling," she said. "I guess I am," I replied. Didn't realize how good ordinary feels until it almost got taken away. She leaned her head against my shoulder. That's the thing about peace, Hank. You don't notice it when it's there. You only feel it when it's gone. Across the street, Arthur was trimming his hedges, actually smiling, talking to his neighbors. The man who once walked with his shoulders hunched now greeted people by name. I'd see him at the community garden every Saturday bringing donuts for the volunteers. The HOA board had officially dissolved a month earlier, replaced by what we called the Neighbor Council. No titles, no politics, just a few folks who cared about the place enough to listen before talking. Meetings were held in the park now, under the shade of the big oak tree. No microphones, no gavel, just folding chairs and coffee thermoses. Sometimes I'd see Jane there, laughing with Mrs. Gable, the woman whose husband almost lost his life because of Karen's male stunt. Every time Mrs. Gable brought up that day, she'd tear up a little, then smile. "You saved us," she'd say, and Jane would just shake her head and answer, "No, we saved each other." Karen never came back to Foxglove Landing. Last we heard, she'd moved to a small apartment 2 towns over after her release. She lost her house, her reputation, and that sharp-edged confidence that used to fill every room she entered. Some neighbors wanted to hate her forever. I didn't. Because somewhere between the noise and the wreckage, I realized something. Villains aren't born overnight. They're made slowly by power, by fear, by the little compromises they stop noticing until they're surrounded by lies they think are normal. And maybe that's what destroyed her. Not the exposure, not the trial, but the quiet moment when she had to face the truth she'd been running from. A few weeks after the sentencing, I got a letter, no return address, just my name written neatly on the envelope. Inside was a single note, unsigned. "Tell the postmaster thank you, and tell your wife she was right, people do matter more than rules." The handwriting was unmistakable, Karen's. Jane read it and sat silent for a long time. Then she said something that stuck with me. Sometimes karma isn't loud. Sometimes it's just a person realizing they lost everything chasing what they didn't need. Life slipped back into its rhythm after that. I fixed up my old pickup. Jane started volunteering at the local food pantry. The post office even invited her to a small appreciation event. Henderson joked that she'd made postal history. And one Saturday morning, while helping the community rebuild the trail behind the park, I saw something that nearly stopped me in my tracks. The woods, the same land Thorne had tried to pave over, were alive again. Birds nesting in the trees. Kids chasing each other down the path. The sunlight flickered through the branches in that lazy, golden way that makes you forget for a moment how close everything came to being lost. Arthur came up beside me, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Crazy, isn't it?" he said. "All that mess, and now look at it." I nodded. "Funny thing about the truth, Arthur, it doesn't need to shout, it just waits for its moment." He smiled. "Guess it finally got one." That evening, Jane and I sat out on the porch again, same spot where all of this started, same creaky swing, same fatting sunset. The neighborhood lights flickered on one by one, and for the first time I noticed how they all seemed softer. Warm, human. I turned to Jane. "You ever think about how close we came to losing it all?" She looked out across the street, watching the fireflies. "Every day," she said, "but sometimes you have to lose peace to remember how to protect it." There was a long silence after that, just the sound of crickets and the distant laughter of kids still playing after dark. And maybe that was the real ending. Not the trial, not the downfall, but this quiet reminder of what matters. Not power, not control, not who runs the neighborhood. Just people showing up for each other when it counts. I took one last sip of coffee, the porch light humming softly above us, and smiled at the calm that had finally returned. Because for the first time since this whole mess began, I didn't feel like a man fighting a war. I just felt home. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.